The cameras flashed. The crew literally froze. And just like that, a multi-million-dollar healing journey turned into a bloody, violent brawl.
Yeah, and Hollywood suddenly had a brand new, absolute terrifying obsession.
Welcome to Sarscope Report. Join us as we uncover the Hollywood drama, the music industry shakeups, and the viral influencer scandals that everyone is talking about.
Exactly. From red carpet surprises to, massive social media controversies, we dive deep into the real stories behind the fame.
And today's deep dive is a huge one. Our mission today is to unpack a pop culture explosion that has completely captivated the internet. We are looking at the YouTube headline that started it all. Zayn attacked Louis. Why Netflix deleted everything.
I mean, the abrupt cancellation of this highly anticipated Netflix documentary starring former One Direction bandmates Zayn Malik and Louis Tomlinson it's wild.
It really is. And to make sense of this for you, the listener, we are pulling from a massive stack of sources spanning right up to April 2026. We've got Wikipedia chronologies, breaking reports from The Sun, The Express Tribune, Daily Jane, Rova, and some incredibly explosive Reddit threads.
Yeah, the fans on Reddit are doing, real-time forensic detective work.
Oh, they always do. Now, as you listen today, I want you to frame this not just as celebrity gossip, because it is so much bigger than that. This is a fascinating real-time case study in how unresolved grief, high-stakes corporate productions, and intense fandom culture can just spectacularly collide.
Right. By the end of this deep dive, you are going to understand exactly how a project designed entirely around healing turned into a relationship-ending fallout.
Exactly. So I want you to picture the classic indie movie trope for a second. You know the aesthetic, right? Two estranged friends driving down a long, dusty highway.
Oh, yeah, the golden hour lighting pouring through the windshield, maybe a few acoustic guitars in the back seat.
Exactly. There's a quiet confession, a few tears, and by the end of the trip, they've beautifully worked through a decade of personal baggage.
Which is, the ultimate comforting narrative of closure. Society just loves to believe that time plus physical proximity automatically equals emotional healing.
Right, it creates this really clean, satisfying equation for the viewer. But what happens when you take that romanticized fantasy, attach an enormous corporate Netflix budget to it, and swap out the two anonymous friends for two of the most famous, heavily scrutinized pop stars on the planet?
Well, you don't get a healing journey. You get an emotional pressure cooker with a faulty release valve.
Yeah, you really do. And to understand how this explosion happened, we have to look at the powder keg itself. The historical baggage between these two is dense. So let's just condense the origin story real quick.
Go for it.
One Direction forms in 2010 on the X Factor. They sell over 70 million records, becoming a massive global phenomenon. But then, in 2015, Zayn abruptly leaves the band.
And that departure instantly sparked a bitter, highly public social media feud, specifically between Zayn and Louis. I mean, they went at it online.
They really did.
Yeah.
And for years, they simply didn't reconcile. It was this prolonged Cold War, with both men navigating their solo careers while actively maintaining a very rigid distance from one another.
Until we hit the tragic catalyst. On October 16th, 2024, their former bandmate Liam Payne tragically dies after falling from a balcony in Argentina.
God, it's just a devastating, world-stopping loss. And it forced a highly public reunion of the remaining members at his funeral that November.
And, grief does strange things to the human brain. It has this profound way of hitting the reset button on old grudges.
Right, suddenly the things you were furious about for a decade feel entirely insignificant. Because by January 2025, we see something fans swore they would never ever see again.
Louis actually attended Zayn's Stairway to the Sky Tour in Los Angeles.
Yes, and Zayn gave him a public shout-out from the stage, pointing him out in balcony, and dedicated the songs What I Am, and alienated him.
Which was a highly visible, emotionally charged olive branch.
Oh, absolutely. And clearly, Hollywood executives were watching that olive branch being extended with dollar signs in their eyes.
Of course they were. Because by October 2025, they announced a 3-part Netflix docuseries. It's directed by Nicola Marsh, produced by Campfire Studios.
Right. And the premise is a road trip across the United States, where Zayn and Louis discuss fatherhood, loss, and their careers.
I mean, from a corporate strategy standpoint, you can see exactly why this was greenlit. You have the built-in massive audience of the One Direction fandom.
Yeah, millions of guaranteed viewers.
Exactly. Plus, the emotional hook of Liam's passing and the redemption arc of two estranged friends reconnecting. For a streaming platform, it is literal reality television gold.
But I'm looking at this premise, and you just have to wonder what the producers were actually thinking regarding the psychological toll.
Oh, it's a terrible idea.
You are taking two global megastars with a decade of unresolved public animosity, giving them the overwhelming emotional weight of their bandmate's recent death, and sticking them in a confined vehicle for a cross-country road trip.
It's like trying to put out a campfire with a can of gasoline.
Right. You're practically engineering a disaster under the guise of therapy. But wait till you hear what came next, because the signs of that disaster didn't manifest as a public explosion initially.
No, they manifested as silence. If we look closely at the retroactive clues, this project was structurally falling apart long before the public had any idea.
So let's examine the timeline, because this is where the PR machinery becomes just fascinating. In January 2026, Louis does a major interview with Billboard to promote his upcoming third solo album, How Did I Get Here?
And standard industry playbook dictates that this is the perfect moment for cross-promotion. You use the album press to drum up hype for the upcoming Netflix show.
Exactly. But during this interview, Louis completely avoids talking about Zayn. He spends significant time praising his other former bandmates, Harry Styles and Niall Horan, but Zayn's name is conspicuously absent.
And when the interviewer finally forces the issue and presses Louis about the Netflix documentary, his response is just, it's a masterclass in distancing.
It really is. He gives an incredibly short, highly specific answer. Quote, "It was his idea, actually. I'll give him credit for that brilliance."
Wow.
Wait, I have to jump in here and point out the timeline discrepancy, because this is wild. If the reports say the actual fight happened in December 2025, that means during this January interview, Louis was doing massive damage control.
Oh, 100%. He was sitting there smiling for Billboard, contractually bound to an illusion that had already shattered.
Right, knowing the Netflix show was likely already dead in the water, just trying to get through his own album promo without dropping the bomb.
Because he likely couldn't legally announce the show was dead without breaching a non-disclosure agreement. So he had to navigate this bizarre cognitive dissonance, functioning as a promotional avatar for a reality that just no longer existed.
It's like a corporate game of hot potato. He's gently but firmly placing the blame back into Zayn's hands before the public even realizes there was an explosion.
Yeah.
And if you're loving these Hollywood twists, make sure you're subscribed, because we have got even crazier stories ahead.
Yeah, hit that subscribe button because we are just getting started.
So you have a smiling pop star holding a secret and a shattered production locked behind closed doors. The immediate question becomes, how does a multi-million-dollar project actually collapse overnight?
Well, in April 2026, The Sun finally broke the story of why the production actually stopped. And it wasn't a scheduling conflict or a polite creative difference.
No, it was a nasty physical altercation outside, right in front of the production crew.
And to understand how a verbal argument escalates into the death of a massive production, we have to look at the psychological trigger. According to the reports, Zayn allegedly insulted Louis' late mother, Johannah Deakin.
Johannah died of leukemia in December 2016. Using a deceased parent as ammunition in an argument is like the absolute nuclear option.
It goes entirely beyond a professional disagreement. It strikes at a profound, unresolved trauma.
And there is a deeply tragic irony embedded in this specific insult, because before her death, Johannah had explicitly told Louis to reconcile with Zayn. She was the one who told him life's too short.
She was literally the original architect of the reconciliation. To have her memory weaponized in that moment essentially severed whatever fragile emotional bridge they had built.
Yeah. And when Louis reacted to the insult, Zayn reportedly punched him straight in the face.
And because Zayn was wearing rings at the time, the physical impact cut Louis' head and reportedly left him with a concussion that required medical treatment.
Which is just awful. And this is where the mechanics of Hollywood reality TV come crashing down. Because this wasn't two reality stars throwing a drink at each other for the cameras to boost ratings.
Right, this was real physical violence. It completely crossed the line from reality TV drama to a massive liability issue.
So explain that for us. How does a single punch instantly dismantle a project of this scale behind the scenes?
It all comes down to entertainment liability and completion bonds. When a studio like Netflix greenlights a docuseries, millions of dollars are insured against cast injury or production delays.
Okay, that makes sense.
So the moment blood is drawn on set and a star requires a medic for a concussion, an incident report must be filed. The insurance adjusters get involved immediately.
So they can't just sweep it under the rug.
Not at all. The cast insurance becomes voided or prohibitively expensive because one of your leads is now a documented physical threat to the other. The lawyers step in, the completion guarantor pulls the funding, and the production simply shuts down. Yeah, the financial and legal risk of continuing is just too high. The cameras stop rolling not because of hurt feelings, but because the liability matrix demands it.
So you have a bleeding pop star and an uninsurable production. The immediate crisis is hiding a physical brawl from the public in the social media age, which of course you can't.
No, but you can control the digital narrative, which is exactly what Louis' family did next.
Right. And first, the director, Nick LaMarche, seemingly confirms the cancellation by posting this remarkably candid Instagram story. It's just a screenshot of the news with the caption. And there goes the last year of work.
Millions of dollars, location scouting, emotional labor just evaporated.
Gone. Then comes the modern press release, the digital severing. Louis immediately unfollows Zayn on Instagram. And crucially, Louis' sisters, Phoebe and Lottie, also unfollow him.
Which signals a united family front. In the modern celebrity ecosystem, a coordinated family unfollow is a definitive public severance of ties.
It bypasses the traditional PR statement entirely.
Exactly. It signaled to the fans exactly where the lines were drawn, confirming that this breach permanently damaged personal family-level trust. Meanwhile, Louis conspicuously still follows Harry, Niall, and the late Liam.
Right as this digital frontier is being drawn, Zayn's camp makes a sudden move. Zayn shares a concerning photo of himself in a hospital bed, citing an unexpected mystery illness.
Right.
And he announces this illness is forcing him to cancel fan events for his own newly dropping 2026 album, Conical.
Now I have to ask you, is Zayn's sudden hospital photo a genuine health scare, or is this a classic celebrity PR maneuver to garner sympathy right as the worst possible story about him drops?
I mean, it's a completely fair question. We obviously cannot medically diagnose him, and the physiological toll of destroying a major project and a friendship could genuinely put someone in the hospital.
Oh, absolutely. Acute stress is real.
But looking at this strictly through the lens of crisis communications, the timing is a textbook example of a tactic known as victim-aggressor reversal.
Break down how that tactic actually works psychologically. Well, when a public figure is about to be outed globally as the aggressor in a violent altercation, their immediate threat is public outrage. Putting that individual in a hospital bed exploits human empathy.
Because it's hard to be mad at someone who looks sick.
Exactly. Neurologically, it is incredibly difficult for the public to maintain active anger at someone who looks visibly weak or vulnerable. It short-circuits the backlash and forces the media to temper their criticism because attacking a hospitalized person makes the journalist look cruel.
Wow. So whether the illness is genuine or exaggerated, the functional result is that it shifts the public discourse away from accountability for violence and towards concern for health.
Exactly. It buys the PR team crucial time to change the emotional temperature of the room.
That is wild. And later in the deep dive, we'll talk about the public reaction that nobody, especially not that PR team, saw coming.
Yeah, because if the goal of that neurological empathy hack was to stop the fans from attacking, it fundamentally failed on a massive segment of the audience.
It really did. The One Direction fandom has been analyzing these individuals for 15 years, and they immediately went to work. We pulled threads from the Reddit community at our FOMOI, and the reaction was intense.
Very intense. One user dramatically framed the news drop by saying, "A second plane has hit the towers."
Which is an insane thing to say, but it perfectly illustrates the level of shock.
That level of dramatic hyperbole is a perfect illustration of parasocial relationships. When fans consume content about a celebrity for over a decade, their brains process that celebrity almost like a real-life friend.
Right, they're so emotionally invested.
So when the narrative they've invested in collapses violently, it doesn't just feel like entertainment news. It registers neurologically as a personal betrayal.
What stands out to me is that the fans didn't just treat this punch as an isolated high-stress incident. They treated it as a data point in a long-term behavioral pattern. They immediately brought up Zayn's history of violent outbursts, specifically pointing to his past assault of Yolanda Hadid. They pulled out the facts that he was mandated to complete a domestic violence course, and during that altercation, he called his own daughter a horrific name.
This is where we see the modern fandom intelligence apparatus at work. Fandoms today operate like decentralized intelligence agencies. They use open-source intelligence tactics to archive past behaviors and track deleted posts.
Right, so when a PR team attempts a victim-aggressor reversal with a hospital photo, the fandom pushes back with receipts.
Exactly. They are actively deconstructing the PR narratives in real time, serving as public accountability boards when traditional media or legal systems fail to do so. And it's fascinating how modern fandoms are evolving. They're no longer just blindly defending their idols.
Not at all. And a huge part of that accountability discussion on Reddit centered on the concept of pretty privilege.
Right.
The fans were actively arguing that if Zayn weren't so conventionally attractive, he would have been thoroughly and permanently canceled years ago for his past behavior.
That's the halo effect in action. Society subconsciously assigns positive moral traits to physically attractive people. The fans are diagnosing this psychological bias in real time.
Yeah, they are pointing out that aesthetics have essentially functioned as a shield against true accountability for his repeated aggressive actions, which is a somber, heavy realization.
It really is.
Reading through these Reddit threads, there is a genuine mourning taking place. They aren't just mourning the loss of the Netflix documentary or the friendship. They are mourning the boys they grew up idolizing.
One fan succinctly summarized the dark legacy of their child's stardom by saying, quote, "One is dead and at least one more is off his rocker."
Which is just heartbreaking.
That quote distills the profound tragedy of the entire situation. It is a stark reminder of the long-term psychological impacts of being thrust into the global spotlight as an adolescent.
Yeah, the damage from those early X Factor days, the pressure of carrying a 70 million record empire on teenage shoulders, the intense scrutiny, it permanently alters your psychological development.
You don't just magically heal from a decade of that trauma because a streaming service puts you in a car and tells you to talk it out.
No, you definitely don't. So, to summarize the journey we've unpacked today, we started with a hopeful, grief-fueled reunion following the tragic death of Liam Payne.
And that raw emotion was immediately scooped up and monetized into a multi-million-dollar Netflix project that promised a clean narrative of healing.
Instead, it ended in a violent, bloody confrontation that destroyed a 15-year relationship for good. It resulted in scrapped television shows, delayed albums, uninsurable productions, and a massive reckoning within one of the largest digital fandoms on Earth.
The painful irony is that the project sought to document their healing, but the artificial pressure of the production itself became the catalyst for their final fracture.
Which brings us back to that indie movie fantasy we talked about at the very beginning.
Oh.
That expectation of a clean, aesthetic healing journey on an open highway. It leaves you with a lingering question to ponder on your own about the ethics of the entertainment industry itself. When platforms like Netflix rush to monetize raw, unresolved, personal trauma, like putting two estranged, grieving men in an emotional pressure cooker, for views, are they documenting reality? Or are they actively creating the conditions for inevitable real-world casualties?
Are we just asking broken people to bleed for our entertainment?
Exactly. Something for you to mull over the next time you queue up a reality docuseries promising closure and healing.
Yeah, stay tuned and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next, because we've always got more to uncover.
You've been listening to Starscope Report, where we uncover the stories shaping Hollywood, music, and pop culture. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that keep the stars shining.